Now, while I understand a lot of people's negativity and criticism behind the idea of Stephen Colbert doing a Lord of the Rings movie, I think everyone needs to chill out. Okay, so the news dropped on Tolkien Reading Day of all days that Peter Jackson is producing a new Lord of the Rings movie, which on the surface sounds great, and I'm sure everybody was happy about that. Then he announced who was writing it with him, and it was Stephen Colbert. Now, I know that seems like such a random selection, a random person to be working on a Lord of the Rings movie if all you know Stephen Colbert from is from The Late Show, which the level of funny has, in my opinion anyways, gone down a whole lot in the last few years. Now, I remember Stephen Colbert back when he was on Comedy Central, doing some guest appearances on The Daily Show, sometimes hosting it when Jon Stewart couldn't. And then he graduates to do his own show right after The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, which is just classically funny. It was just so irreverent for the medium of a talk show host, but just poking fun at so many of the ways in which, at that point in time, what conservative news outlets were doing and how they were presenting themselves. But then when he went to The Late Show to replace David Letterman, like from day one, it just didn't feel as funny anymore for me. And then it just got less and less funny. And so I kind of tuned out. But one of the things I remember from the days when he was at Comedy Central is that they would inject it in his guest spots on The Daily Show, how crazy a Lord of the Rings fan he was. And he's not just any fan. He is a legit scholar. Like, he knows the trilogy books inside and out. He's read everything that's related that Tolkien wrote in that world. I believe he probably even speaks a little bit of Elfish. But he knows this inside and out. I would say he's almost as much of a Tolkienite that he is a Catholic. And if you know anything about Stephen Colbert, he is like super Catholic. And so it's like if his Catholic level is up here, his Tolkienism with Lord of the Rings is like right underneath it a little bit. So the idea of him, forgoing and almost corrupting this thing that he grew up loving, which I'm pretty sure was a significant part of his formative years, I think it's a short-sighted angle on it. I understand a whole lot of his, political ideology was front and center when he was doing The Late Show. I just don't see it right now, anyways, how he's going to do that with something that is just so personal to who he is as a human being, not as an entertainer, not as a celebrity, not as a talk show host or a comedian, but as a human being. All of the big ideas of good and evil, of doing the right thing in lieu of everything else around you, just, being an obstacle to doing such. I don't see him foregoing those themes, either for a paycheck or to pander to a certain section of any audience, really, of the public in general, just so that he can, have any kind of relevance again. And one of the things that I thought about as I was, consuming the reactions that everyone was having and reading some of the articles that were published, is that this feels very like a great setup for a comeback. Bit of a comeback for Peter Jackson, who hasn't done much after The Lord of the Rings, aside from like The Lovely Bones, the Beatles documentary, and unfortunately the Hobbit trilogy, which I am no fan of at all. But there is a part of me that can easily forgive him for the quality of those movies because of everything that happened behind the scenes. And so it's like, okay, he can come back to this world, and now he has some time to actually craft something that would live up to the standard that he himself set with the original trilogy. And the fact that, okay, Colbert kind of lost a lot of the magic that he had back in his Comedy Central days, and maybe now he can kind of reclaim some type of respectability, some credibility, as it's connected to something that is just so near and dear to his heart. So that's where I come down on it. I don't have any expectations that it's going to be terrible. I don't have expectations that it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm just kind of go into it and let the chips fall where they may. I'm not going to make any crazy assumptions as of now. I think everyone is getting a little bit caught up in the rage baiting, to be very honest with you. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.